Weagree is not limited to contract creation only. It supports you end to end, from start to finish. And that's quite powerful. You want to bridge the negotiation stage because if you answer a questionnaire, you're collecting quite a number of data that you want to use later on for managing your contracts. And it's not limited to start date, end date, whether the contracts are assignable or whether there's a change of control clause in an agreement. But in a more mature implementation of contract lifecycle management, you would also want to be able to manage your contracts on other data. And those are typically the ones that are result of the questionnaire that you've been answering. Then you don't want to exit Weagree after creating your first stage. And that's not necessary. Weagree supports you throughout the entire pre-contractual stage of versioning and negotiations, collecting your files. It's your central desktop where all your contracting work comes together. It means that you have to be able also to upload contracts that have not been automated, that have not been created through answering a questionnaire. And that's actually what Weagree does. I'm going to show you how that works, and I'm going to also show you the power of the transaction management stage as Weagree supports it. Especially if you set up an integration with SharePoint, then the documents would be stored on the relevant SharePoint sites that you have, in the folders that you want to keep them in. But Weagree will still remain your central starting point, and you don't need to have all those clicks through SharePoint sites and SharePoint folders, as it is all centralized within Weagree. And that's quite powerful. I'm going to show you how it works and why this is a cost and time saver in your contracting work. First of all, you see the tab here in the margin, or you click the button Contract, Create Contract, and here is where lots of contract can start. Of course, we saw it already on the dashboard that the 5 most frequently used templates are collected on the dashboard in the widget. You may remember that from the very beginning of this demo, but here's your complete set of all the templates, all the automated templates, but you also see that there are Word documents over here. You can bring your model contracts into Weagree and list them alongside the automated templates. And you can see the difference between an automated contract and a Word document. And if you have this integration with SharePoint set up, then basically it stores that document in the right folder once you open it. And from there you can manage the transaction still from within Weagree, and it would behave just like any other contract. In some 75% of the cases, you would receive the first draft contract from the counterparty. And of course, here is your starting point for importing the document into Weagree. Importing the external document into Weagree. You can import it, drag and drop it manually, and there's also, as we saw that previously, and you may have noticed in the top right corner, there's also the possibility that you forward that email to the Weagree portal, to your Weagree portal, and Weagree will deliver that email here in your inbox, and you will pick it from there to create a new contract entry. It would be similar to importing your first draft over here. It's not part of this demo video, but it's worth mentioning as it is over here. Start a project. If you want to create a transaction where several templates relate to each other, think of a statement of work, master framework agreement, or a set of agreements that relate to each other, to one single project or transaction, then you can start a project and you would drag the created contract entries into that project and you would manage it from there. I'm not going to show you that, it's for a separate video. If you receive the first draft agreement from the counterparty, you will likely want to use certain clauses, at least from your own clause library. Click on clause library, it will open the clause library and it will allow you to select the clauses, and then it creates a Word document with that single clause only for you to copy paste in the markup that you want to send back. We are automating also that process and we're making it more convenient. But of course, this is the old-fashioned way, using your clause library that is accessible from here. If you did not make them accessible over here, you might have an intranet site where you have your Word templates available. That could be a SharePoint site, of course, and you might simply want to point the users to that site. By default, it is set to the model contracts platform where Weagree shares its model contracts, but you may well reconfigure this so as to point at your own intranet site with your Word documents over there. The visibility of these buttons can be tweaked so that people in the business don't have straight access to a clause library or to the model contracts that you want to reserve for in-house legal counsel. Same for starting a project. I already mentioned it. Weagree is enterprise grade, which means that you can organize your templates, you can organize accessibility of legal entities, the entity management, but also the visibility of contracts on the basis of user groups. And those user groups could be anyone, IP and R&D department, procurement department. We have already created a contract, so I'm not going to step into that, but let's now assess the capabilities of your transaction management that you have here on the page generally. Let me start by explaining the main buttons that you see on the top. I already explained one, but there's also the possibility to invite a guest user into a single contract entry. In creating a services agreement for online campaigns, I might want to invite a third person, a supplier, a customer, or an internal user, invite that user to also answer certain Q&A questions in connection with this transaction. That might be a very powerful one. It opens a pop-up. It asks me to enter a password or to identify my colleague, and it then fully operates securely, of course. All they find on their homepage is this single contract entry for which you invited them, and they will not be able to create anything else or see more than this contract entry only. Quite a helpful thing for collaborative contracting in an event. In connection with contracts, I already told you that we have a task Kanban where you can manage your tasks. More about that later on. But it also means that you can just simply assign a task in connection with a contract, not specifically with a Q&A question or a specific clause or so, but simply a task to one of your colleagues. Once a transaction is done, we would do the e-signing. I'll show you later on. Manage basically means the contract is signed and you want to manage it in the CLM, and it would start from here. On this page, you would have a shortcut access to the entity management and to the CRM, which may be integrated, especially the CRM with party details or integrated, but still you would have access from over here. Then there are a few buttons that are quite remarkable on this page, and they are actually my personal search filters. I have created shortcut filters that if I click on GPAs outstanding for more than 2 months, it gives me in one click an overview of the general purchasing agreements that have been under the radar for too long. Same for loan agreements. I created a filter. If I click on it, I can immediately see draft loan agreements that have not been signed yet. And I did the same for NDAs. I can prevent this way that my colleagues start doing business without a contract being in place, simply because the contract is still pending on the overview page over here. I also have the possibility to check my colleagues, how they are doing, or jump into their business. If a colleague is ill, I might check if Bernard Hinault is busy, how many contracts he has under his hands, Lance Armstrong, Kneteman. I have them all in one overview. I can also check how many general purchasing agreements are under their responsibility or under my colleague's responsibility and step into that as well. Let's go back to my own overview where I'll show you that there are more advanced options. You might have noticed on the overview page that certain contract entries are marked magenta. It indicates that the Word document as we are currently negotiating it or as has been sent out is outdated as opposed to the template that we currently use for creating new contracts. And in the case of the NDA, it's not that urgent. But for certain contracts, it may well be important that you want to stick to the latest version, and at least you want to be able to see what the changes are. Now, if you want to update this contract for the latest changes in the template, then basically you would select it, you would update it, and it will link it to the newer version of the template. If you have a set of contract entries that basically relate to one single transaction, more or less a project, then you select them and you can convert them into a project and handle them as a project. Invite colleagues into the project and work together on a project basis rather than have them as single contract entries over here. If you would like to discuss your Q&A answers to the questionnaire with a colleague, then you can export the answers given in the questionnaire and have it as a separate file. If you are, for example, tendering a transaction and you would like to create exactly the same copy of your Q&A answers for another competing supplier in the tender, then you would copy your Q&A. It uses the same answers and you would only change the name details of the counterparty, and you would have two exactly the same first draft contracts that you create. You can export a report, and you can of course reassign contracts to other colleagues. For example, if you find that colleague of yours is particularly busy, for example, Marianne Fox may be too busy, and we discussed, and if I take the overview of her contracts, then indeed reassign these contracts to another colleague, which could be Bernard. And then if you look at the Bernard's overview, you will see that Bernard has been assigned to much of Marianne's work. That would be very helpful to balance the workload across the team. That for the more advanced options. You quickly saw the search options, which are quite powerful. These are also separate on the search page available. I'm not going to dig into the details of the entity management, but it makes sense that I give you a quick peek over here because entity management is fully integrated with the entire contract creation and the entire CLM. From this overview page, if you click on entity management, you have one overview on to the legal entities that you are entitled to see. Also, this is managed on the basis of user groups that you are a member of, so that is role-based or user profile defined. You can see here Weagree BV and all our affiliated companies across the world, where you can also see what is the address and how many contracts have been entered into by Weagree, for example. If I click on the description, I can see the basic details of the legal entity, so a registration number and party details like where it is established, and then I would go to the entity details in the entity management from here, where I can see who are the shareholder subsidiaries, who are the managing directors and any representatives, constitutional documents, etc., etc. I'm not going to do that, but this is just for you to have an impression of how the entity management fully integrates into Weagree. And then one final concern, of course, the visibility of these data can be managed in the user management. So it's not, if you delegate contract creation to the business, that people in the business will have full access to everything. No, they can only pick and see those details or those legal entities as are presented to them and edit those details that you allow them to edit. There's much time saving in the management of files, and although it may not feel like something that costs you a lot of time, it is at least very convenient how Weagree supports you in this and how Weagree accelerates a whole lot of small steps in this process. Let's take a closer look at how the repository works by opening a contract entry. And what you see over here are basically all the files that relate to this particular contract entry. It includes separated schedules or annexes, transaction-related documentation, and whatever you may need to collect in connection with a contract entry. It's all up to you. There's an information icon where a short explanatory note can be added, whatever you want to add. It may relate to the status of that particular file. If you want to upload a new version of the document, for example, as it was sent by you by the counterparty, let's just drag and drop, and Weagree then proposes it in the file name, of course, as it had in the attachment or in the folder from where you upload it. And Weagree allows you to change the file name just like that. Typically, of course, the file name is one that the other party has determined, and you want to maintain your own file name, so to have certain order in your filings and in your repository. You can add a note to the particular file, indicate the file nature, and you may configure the visibility of this particular file for all your colleagues, or more specifically for guest users. You don't necessarily want everyone to see all the contract files, and that's what you manage by indicating the visibility. In the overview, that will still remain visible because there's a shield that shows up next to the file, indicating that not everyone is able to see that file like you can. Creating a compare between two versions is also very convenient. Of course, you can integrate Weagree with your own redlining software, but most of the customers won't have that available. But still, in that case, Weagree enables you to create a compare to make sure that the version that you are uploading, even with track changes, does show the changes that you want to see and not has some additional hidden changes that were not entered in the track changes by the counterparty. Weagree suggests to you what the original version and the modified version is. You have the possibility to tweak the name of the file of the compare document that's being created, and you may indicate, of course, that the file needs to be added to the repository. As the transaction proceeds, it may not be necessary to keep all the files inside. You may want to archive them for later on. You don't necessarily want to delete them at once. Probably at a later stage you want to have them in your archive, just in case you will have you encounter some disputes. And also archiving files is a thing that you can do with only one click. And if you want to retrieve it from the archive, also retrieving is something with one click away. One way to add new files to your contract entry is to drag and drop. I just show you. But there's also another possibility, which is if you receive a first draft contract or a version 2 or 3 or contract related files by email, you can forward that email to the Weagree portal. And Weagree will automatically deliver it in your inbox. And that's what happened over here. In the top right corner, you can see that there's my inbox with 3 files forwarded to it. And the one is relating to a contract called Misaka. Here's the email text, and 2 ways to deal with the email. The one is it's the first draft that I received from a third party, or it is a new version or new contract entry related files that I would like to append to an existing contract entry. Now, the latter is the case, so I append it to a contract entry. That is in this case Misaka Tech Support KK, and if I indicate that that's the file, I can also indicate whether I want to have the email text added to the communications in connection with this contract entry, so that I maintain and I still have in my repository the communications with the counterparty that I just forwarded. Then in connection with the file, of course, I can change the file name. Then this is version 5, final comments after our meeting. The file is a draft contract version. It should be visible to everyone in this. Going to save it as is. I might upload some additional files if I had my own notes, for example. I could do that over here. If there were more attachments to the email that I don't want to have in my contract repository, I can remove those. I can indicate that this file needs to be analyzed by the AI-driven automated contract review tooling within Weagree. That might be useful, but for the time being, I'm not going to do that. And all I do then is I save the file. It brings me straight into the repository of this particular contract. Weagree fully automatically stores the contract alongside the other files of this particular contract, as you can see it over here. This is at the same time the contract for managing contracts, CLM. I'll come back to that later on in the process. For now, I just want to check a few things as regards the draft that was sent to me. I would want to make a compare against version 4, adds it to the list where I can check whether indeed this is what I would want to see. I think it's quite okay, so let's store these in the archive. I'll take them out of the first view. These are the contracts that are relevant for the transaction as it is right now. And we can pursue to the e-signing. But before doing that, let me quickly highlight what you see over here. This is already the contract sheet with details for contract lifecycle management, as I said. So some aspects had already been filled in after version 2 was being discussed between the parties. So the business aspects have been implemented already. This is the repository. I might also indicate here that I would want to make a reference to an external repository or to an external site that we have built in connection with this contract. I can add that over here, and if I do so, it will create a button. An icon has been added. If I click on this, it opens a separate tab and it brings me to the site of this contract. That's a convenient thing if you use Weagree as your starting point or your workbench for all the contract related work. If I then click next, I can see who else is involved in this transaction. That's for the time being only me. I would have the guests listed over here. I could also add the users who are comments or requests for support from the legal department, for example. Now, thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. We are very happy to answer any of them. Thanks a lot.